Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the April 2025 SBIF District Rollout. We'll be getting started in just a few moments. For everybody that's joining us today, you will receive an email copy of this presentation. You can also rewatch it on DPD's YouTube page. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, feel free to put them in the Q&A chat box. We will be answering them in real time, as well as having a Q&A answer session at the end. We will get started in just a few moments. Again, hello everyone. My name is Kim Brisky. I am the Director of Communications at SummerCore, the administrator of the Small Business Improvement Fund on behalf of the City of Chicago. Thank you so much for joining us for the April 2025 SBIF District Rollout presentation. Everybody on the call today will receive a follow-up email with a copy of the presentation. You can also rewatch this on DPD's YouTube page. If you have any questions during the presentation, you're welcome to put the question in the Q&A box, and we will have somebody answering them in real time. Additionally, we will have another Q&A session at the end of the presentation to answer some questions live. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gabadel with the Department of Planning and Development. Gab?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for making it out today to learn more about this SBIF program and our rollout this month. My name is Gabadel Miranda, and I am a coordinator of economic development for the City of Chicago Department of Planning and Development, otherwise known as DPD. As a representative from the city's SBIF administrator, SummerCore will be making our presentation today, and I just wanted to welcome you before we get started. The Small Business Improvement Fund, also known as SBIF, provides grants to small businesses and property owners to make needed improvements to their properties. Over the last few years, we have made a lot of exciting changes to the SBIF program, including the increased amount of grants available to you and making new funding available to the TIFs across different districts, TIF districts within the city. Technical assistance throughout this program is a key strength. When you submit your application, you will be assigned a SummerCore project manager. That person will be there to help you throughout the SBIF process and answer any questions that will come up throughout the timeline of your project. If you have any questions about applying or run into any issues throughout your project that could delay the construction and the build out of your project, call your SummerCore project manager, and they can answer and help you troubleshoot the issue at hand. Your local agency is another great resource. These local chambers of commerce or community development corporations are here to help you also navigate this process. In the presentation, Sylvia will list them, and you could also find one nearest to you within the locator tool on our website. Just like SummerCore's project managers, they are here to help you. They often can help with SBIF application or with things like introductions to your local lenders and help you with the permitting process for permits. We are here to support you in your application because we want to see your business and your neighborhoods as well as communities flourish. So please use this as a resource that is available to you. And with that, I'm happy to introduce Sylvia Orozco, SBIF Director for SummerCore.
Thank you, Gabadale, and thank you all for joining us today. As she mentioned, my name is Sylvia Orozco. I am the Director of the Small Business Improvement Fund program. For over 19 years, I've assisted hundreds of existing businesses, landlords, and startup businesses. This program is administered by Summer Corps. Summer Corps is a not-for-profit organization. We are a small business lender that offers SBA loans. We administer the SBIF program and also administer the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund program. This program is now celebrating its 25th year. This is one of the longest and most successful City of Chicago grant programs. We've helped retain and expand small businesses in every neighborhood of the city, dispersing over $119 million to over 2,100 businesses and landlords. Please be advised that this is a non-residential program. The funds cannot be used for capital or operating expenses. It is strictly for permanent infrastructure repairs. So we can go ahead and begin the presentation. Again, thank you for joining us, and we will have a question and answer session at the end. Today we will go over what is SBIF, what is our program mission, the grant parameters, and project timeline. Getting started, is your business or property in a SBIF district? Which SBIF districts are open or on deck? What are the SBIF program rules? How do you apply? And what resources are available to help? We will have a list of the April districts that we're rolling out, as well as a sample project, SBIF facts available to you, and also the additional question and answer session at the end. Program mission. Launched in 1999, the City of Chicago's Small Business Improvement Fund program helps promote economic development by providing small businesses and landlords with reimbursement grants for permanent building improvement cost. Residential projects are not eligible. SBIF grants use local tax increment financing, known as TIF, revenue to reimburse grantees for the pre-approved repair or rehab of their business facilities or adjacent land acquisition. Summer Corps is the program administrator contracted by the city's Department of Planning and Development. Grant parameters. The property must be in a TIF district where SBIF funds are available and is authorized to accept applications. Landlords of either commercial or industrial properties are eligible. Owners and operators of commercial or industrial businesses that own their property qualify for SBIF. Tenants with prior written approval from the property owner, and also startups may apply with a business plan. A city license is required. Eligibility. If you are a commercial or industrial landlord, the cumulative net worth must be $9 million or less, and the liquid assets cannot exceed $500,000 per individual. If you are a commercial tenant or owner occupied, on average, your gross sales must be less than $9 million or less. Industrial or owner occupied applicants must have 200 or fewer full-time employees. All owner-occupied properties are subject to both tenant and landlord requirements. Grant size. The maximum per an industrial property is $250,000. The maximum for a commercial property occupied by a single owner or tenant can receive up to $150,000 grant. The maximum per a commercial property that's occupied by multiple owners or tenants is $250,000, with $75,000 being the maximum assistance per individual applicant. SBIF applications and grants are non-transferable between applicants and/or properties. The applicants who wish to apply for SBIF funds for more than one property must submit separate applications for each property. Applicants may receive one or more grants up to their maximum program assistance. Once the maximum is reached, the applicants will need to wait 3 years to reapply. Reimbursements. If your sales or net worth fall between $0 to $3 million, you'd qualify for 90% reimbursement of eligible cost. If your sales or net worth fall between $3 to $6 million, you'd qualify for 60% reimbursement of eligible costs. And if your sales or net worth are between 6 to 9 million, you'd qualify for 30% reimbursement. All industrial projects are eligible for 50% reimbursement of eligible costs. Here we have a SBIF grant calculation example. Let's say that Grace submits an application for a SBIF grant that's in an open district with total eligible project cost of $100,000. She's proposing to make permanent building improvements to her existing retail shop for which she is a tenant. Grace has been in business for 5 years. Over the last 3 years, her gross sales averaged $1.5 million. Here we have a breakout of eligible costs as follows. The total project eligible costs are $100,000. As a commercial tenant applicant with gross sales under $3 million, she qualifies for a 90% SBIF grant, 90% reimbursement. That leaves the city's responsibility at $90,000 and the applicant's responsibility at $10,000. The SBIF grant is a reimbursement grant, so project participants should be prepared with financing to support the cost of the permanent building improvements. The applicants are encouraged to contact their business lender or reach out to one of the lenders listed on the Summer Corps' website in a timely manner. Grantees may choose to complete their project in phases rather than covering 100% of the project cost up front. To participate, the grantees must receive an approval for the full scope of work and the phase work schedule. Construction timing will be based on necessity and contractors' recommendations. Receiving phase disbursements will be based on progress of work. So here we have an example of a phased project. So let's say that this applicant needs to do a complete roof tear off, a new HVAC system, and facade renovations. Their contract price is at $180,000. They qualify for 90% reimbursement, so they will be receiving a $150,000 grant. However, they do not have $180,000 sitting around to just pay the contractor up front. They do have $60,000 available, so they can use that $60,000 to cover the cost of the roofing project. Once that project is complete and they submit proof of payments to Summer Corps, we can request the reimbursement. At 90%, that reimbursement will be $54,000. So once that $54,000 is received, they can then use that to work on the HVAC system. So they can cover the $40,000 price tag. And then once that $40,000 worth of work is completed and we receive the proof, we will then request reimbursement for the $40,000 cost of the HVAC system and so forth. So we can do up to 3 phases. This is in place to help the business owners that do not have the full contract price available. We want to be able to break it out as much as we possibly can in various disbursements up to 3 payouts. SBIF project timeline. In stage 1, the applicants will be required to complete their applications and to prove that they have site control. This is the applicant eligibility review stage. As we refer to it as stage 1, they are granted up to 20 days to submit any required items. If they are deemed eligible, they will then proceed to stage 2. This is the project eligibility review stage. They're granted up to 120 days to submit any plans, bids, specifications, and also obtain any specifications that are obtained and also resolve any debts that are owed to the city of Chicago. So once we have everything we need for stage 2, this will then be presented to the city of Chicago for approval. This is in stage 3, the project construction phase. Once it's approved by DPD, the applicants will receive a conditional commitment letter and the construction can begin. They're granted up to 10 months concurrently. The proof of permit or permit application must be submitted within 120 days following the date of the commitment letter. Additionally, the proof of financing is in place also. So again, that is required Within 120 days following the date of the letter, they must prove that they have funding available. So you must prove that you have at least 50% of the full contract price available to you in order to keep the application active, and the permits for the work that was approved that requires permits must be obtained within that time frame as well. So again, as a reminder, you are granted up to 10 months to complete the construction from the date of approval. Once that work is done, we refer to this as stage 4. This is the reimbursement stage. We request the payment documentation. This should include sworn statements, invoices, canceled checks, and waivers of lien. It should be sent over to SummerCore for review. After a final site visit and processing of documents, the reimbursement check will be delivered in about 4 to 6 weeks. Unless DPD has granted an extension, the applicants who do not complete each stage within the required phase time limits will be disqualified and removed from the program. Is your business or property in a SBIF district? You can visit our website at summercore.com/SBIF to see if your property is in a SBIF district. Once you get to this page, you can click on the locator tool that you see here on the screen. That is going to take you to this SBIF locator tool, where you can then enter your address of the property that you're looking to renovate. So once you enter that address here, it's going to give you detailed information pertaining to that specific property. If it is in a TIF district, it will give you the name of the TIF. It will give you the rollout dates as well as the delegate agency's contact information. Which SBIF districts are open or on deck? Eligible SBIF districts in Chicago span neighborhoods on the north, south, and west sides. Each month marks a new 30-day period in which the SBIF districts with available funds open for applications. Notice of district openings are provided to relevant aldermen, posted on the DPD and SummerCore's websites, and included in the SBIFgram. You can visit our website for the most up-to-date list of open and on-deck districts. Here we have a sample of what the calendar looks like. What are the SBIF program rules? Here we have some ineligible business types. This list is not comprehensive, so if you are unsure whether or not your business qualifies, please feel free to reach out with any questions to SummerCore. Some of the ineligible business types include chains and franchise businesses, places of worship, smoke shops, tobacco dealers, adult use, liquor stores, residential storage warehouses. So these businesses do not qualify for SBIF. Eligible improvement cost. We do cover roofing and facade work, components of signs and awnings which are permanently affixed to the building, alterations or structures that are needed for ADA compliance, such as railings or ramps, or if you need ADA accessible restrooms, we can cover that work as well. HVAC and other mechanical systems, plumbing and electrical work, certain project-related architectural and construction management fees that are related to the project can also be covered. Permanent interior renovations, including fixtures, and the purchase of adjacent land parcels for purpose of expansion or parking. Ineligible improvement cost. We do not cover any new construction, whether it's an addition, an expansion, or ground-up construction. Any standalone minor repairs or cosmetic improvements do not qualify as standalone projects. However, if they are part of a large renovation, they can be covered. Equipment-related expenses such as appliances, computers, office furniture, anything that can be easily taken out of the property will not be covered. Any planters that are surrounded or affixed to the building, outdoor dining or drinking areas, including roof decks, beer gardens, outdoor patios, balconies, awnings, porches, and decks. do not qualify for reimbursement through SBIF. Any fencing, including pergolas, trellises, arbors, privacy screens, and similar structures. Parking lot construction or repairs, landscaping, and work on the interior of residential units do not qualify. Design requirements. The applicants for commercial properties that are seeking a grant of $25,000 or greater are required to make at least one exterior improvement using at least 10% of the maximum grant amount. To receive project approval from DPD, the improvements must conform to DPD's design guidelines. The applicants are strongly advised to consult with SummerCore and design professionals on design requirements and guidelines before drawing up plans for work. Key exterior design guidelines reviewed during the approval stage include preserving or recreating the original design and window openings when possible, incorporating permanent signage to clearly identify the business, adequate lighting, especially near entrances to welcome customers, avoid window clutter. The windows should let in natural light and attract passerbys to the business. Other forms of security are preferred, but if necessary, only interior mounted security gates that are integrated into the storefront design will be reimbursed. Applicant compliance. Checks will be performed on all applicants during the approval stage to ensure that they are compliant with child support laws and not indebted to the city. Any scofflaw debt must be cured to participate in SBIF. The applicants can cure the debt via a city payment plan. Applicants using a payment plan must be in compliance with that to receive the SBIF reimbursement funds. All applicants must be current on property taxes to receive the conditional commitment for funding or reimbursement for completed work. Each applicant must sign an economic disclosure affidavit. The grantees must sign an affidavit certifying that they will not relocate out of the TIF district or sell the business or property within a 3-year period following disbursement of funds. To be reimbursed, the landlord applicants must have an executed lease with a qualified tenant, and that tenant must be occupying and actively operating their business or not-for-profit out of the lease space. How do you apply? You can visit one of our websites. We have 2 websites. One is the chicago.gov/SBIF. The other is summercore.com/SBIF. You can visit either one. On the city's website, there's a new application that can be submitted via Submittable. They're now offering an online application option here. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to our contact, Gabrielle Miranda at cityofchicago.org. Again, this information will be provided to you, so you can always refer back to it. So if you visit our website, we have a PDF application that can be PDF filled, and it can be submitted via email. What resources are available to help? On the SummerCore's website, we have access to resources that are available to support your projects. You can also connect with your local delegate agency for assistance in filling out your application. Here on this page, you can find a list of licensed contractors, our SBIF locator tool, the program rules, design guidelines, resources for active applicants, and also a list of SBIF lenders. This is a list of lenders that have worked with previous SBIF applicants and that have provided financing to fund their project. So what we can do is we can sign a bank assignment. The applicant and SummerCore signs off on a bank assignment stating that the proceeds of the grant will be made directly to the lender to pay off a portion of the loan, and the applicant will then be responsible for paying off the remaining balance. Here we have the list of delegate agencies. Please get to know them. These organizations are assigned to assist the small businesses in the districts that are opening for the month of April. So here we have them categorized per TIF district. So if you're in the 119th and Halsted TIF district, you can reach out to Far South CDC. Here we have a few listed for Avalon Park and South Shore. So please reach out to the delegate agencies. They are available to assist in completing applications, submitting them, sort of guiding you through the process. So please reach out to them. Here we have a list of districts that are open for the month of April. We are currently accepting applications through April 30th at 5 p.m. The districts for this month include 119th and Halsted, Avalon Park, South Shore, Chicago Central Park, Lawrence and Kedzie, and Lawrence and Pulaski. Here we have our sample project. This is in the Chicago and Central Park TIF district. This is the results. This is a fitness facility at 1045 North Pulaski Road. As you can see, the before pictures here, it definitely needed some facade improvements and floor joists, flooring, a lot going on here that was missing. So these next pictures will show the after pictures. An entirely new facade here, very drastic improvement here, really nice to see. So this is what our goal is, to beautify the properties within these corridors and make much needed improvements so that these properties can be utilized. So with this project specifically, there was some tuck pointing and exterior facade washing that was done, installed 2 new storefronts with the glass doors as well. On the interior, they installed new interior partitions, drywall and trimming throughout, replaced some damaged subwood floors and installed the plank flooring. They installed interior doors and rear doors along with the security locks, electrical work including rough and finish, including interior and exterior lighting, outlets and switches, HVAC work with the new furnace, ductwork and condensers, and plumbing repairs with new fixtures for 3 restrooms. Moving along to SBIF facts. What additional documents should you have on hand to submit along with the SBIF application? While it's not required when submitting the initial application form, please note that these items are required to complete the SBIF application process. The required documents vary depending on the applicant type. Once we begin processing the applications, you will receive a letter based on your applicant type that specifies the exact documents that will be required. So some of these items include business tax returns, the proof of ownership, personal financial statements, executed lease agreements. So depending on your applicant type, we require different items. Some of these will be provided to you as templates, and some of these items will be required for you to submit on your behalf. Are startups or new businesses eligible? Yes, most startups can apply. Startup applicants will need to supply a detailed business plan and projections of the business's income and expenses for its first 36 months of operation as part of their application materials. The City of Chicago reserves the right to impose additional conditions for funding in connection with startup business applications. If you've been in business for 1 to 2 years, SummerCore requires tax returns and a projection of gross sales to equal 3 years of data. Are you eligible if you live outside of Chicago? The important consideration is where you have your business or your property. To participate in SBIF, your property must be in the City of Chicago, as the funding source comes from the City of Chicago's property taxes. If your business or property is in another area, please call that city's Planning, Economic Development, or Community Development Department to see what other programs may be available to assist small businesses. What if your building has both business and residential spaces? This program is for business use, but there are mixed use exceptions. Many envelope projects such as roofing, facade improvements, and tuck pointing can be eligible. Can SBIF be used with other City of Chicago grant programs? The answer is no. SBIF cannot be used at the same time as other financial assistance programs like the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund or Chicago Recovery Plan grants on the same project covering the same work. However, you may apply for multiple grants at the same time and select the best fit for you, provided that you stay within the grant timeline requirements. Will there be enough funds for all applicants? Each TIF district that has the SBIF program authorized in it has limited funds reserved for the program. If the demand for SBIF funds is greater than the available funding supply, then a lottery will be conducted to determine the order in which each grant application may be accommodated. If any surplus funds become available, they will be allocated to waitlisted applicants. Is there SBIF funding available in my district? Every SBIF area has its own budget that the city refills if it has TIF funds available and if there's a demonstrated need for more grant money. We also maintain an interested parties list for funds, which you can also send an email to spiff@summercore.com to join. When more funding becomes available or the city allocates more funds, we will let you know. The interested parties list helps the City of Chicago gauge demand for additional funding. What if I am in a TIF and it is not a SBIF? Tax increment financing, known as TIF, is the mechanism that funds the Small Business Improvement Fund, known as SBIF. If you are in a TIF district and it does not have a SBIF, please contact your alderman. Here we have contact information for the SBIF project managers, as well as Nora Curry. She is the director from the Department of Planning and Development. We do have two websites. The City of Chicago's website does have Google Translate available, so they do have the resources that can be translated into other languages. Again, a copy of the presentation and a link to the video will be emailed to all attendees. We can go ahead and get started with the questions now.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And everybody, as a reminder, if you do have a question today, please do put it in the Q&A box so that we can get answering. I was going to say, Sylvia, would it be possible to start off just with, in general, can you speak to some of the most common challenges that applicants face and some tips to have a successful project?
Sure. So since this is a reimbursement grant, the biggest challenge is financing, having the upfront financing available. So we don't want that to deter you from applying. You do still have some time to get those things in order. However, we do want you to understand that it does have to be fully financed prior to us dispersing any funds. So that would be the biggest challenge there. Like I said, don't let that deter you from applying, but I do always suggest that applicants get started as soon as possible with the financing. So if you're looking to apply for a loan, get started with that as soon as possible so that it doesn't use up your construction time. We're granting 10 months for construction completion. However, 10 months tends to fly by, especially if you're, taking into account the timing of the permits and also inspections. Even if you want to do the phases, we have to keep in mind that there's a 4 to 6 week waiting period as that reimbursement gets processed. So that should all be taken into account if doing the phased project is your plan going forward. Second challenge would be, finding good contractors, good architects. There's plenty out there. However, I really suggest that you guys vet them properly. So we require at least two bids. We always suggest that you obtain a lot more bids, as many as you possibly can, to get a sense of how the contractors are responsive, what their knowledge is, verify that they have an actual license and insurance, which will be required on our end too, but you just want to make sure that they're properly licensed and insured. You don't want any unforeseen issues and you find out later that they're not properly licensed and insured. So those would be the biggest challenges, but also, just take responsibility for your project. I know sometimes you hire someone to do the work, but ultimately you want to stay on top of things, make sure that they stay on top of things as well. If you're working with architects, it's one thing to get the architectural drawings done and submitted to the city. However, if there are comments provided by the city, revisions that need to be made, they should be made within a timely manner. So it's good to keep that communication open with the architects and the contractors as well.
Helpful. This is sort of a two-part system. One, does my application stay in the system if funds run out? So maybe we can talk a little bit about the waiting list, the lottery, how that works. But the other question was, if there was no money available and they did the work without going through the approval process, could they get reimbursed for that?
Unfortunately not. You do have to get approved prior to making any payments to contractors and prior to getting any work started. So you do need prior approval. Unfortunately, if the work has already been done, we cannot retroactively pay for any of that work that was completed. So I'll go back to the waitlisting process. So basically, if every budget or every TIF district, I should say, has a separate budget available. So let's say, for example, that we receive applications that are requesting $1 million, but we only have $500,000. So obviously we can't cover all of the applications. So we invite everyone to a lottery where we basically have every application with an ID number, and those ID numbers are shuffled. So we begin to start processing the applications in the order that they're shuffled. So we use up as much money as we can. So that means there's going to be projects that are funded. Some are going to be partially. There may be one that's partially funded and the others will be placed on the wait list. So if your application is placed on the wait list, it will remain active for 24 months after that lottery date, unless that TIF expires before the 24 months. So if someone does not complete everything that they plan to do, or they don't qualify, they don't meet the deadlines, they're removed, that money goes back into that TIF account, and that money becomes available to the next person in that drawn order. So we go by that drawn order, depending on how much funding is available. So if funding does become available, we'll call you, let you know it's available, check to make sure that the work hasn't already been done, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Somebody was asking when the disbursements will be announced, which I think kind of ties into what you just talked about, which is more, again, this is a non-competitive grant. This is, SBIF is based on if you're eligible and how much money is in there. Can you talk a little bit about the timeline of like when the application period ends, sort of what's the timeline to finding out whether or not you will be able to have money to get your project started?
Sure. So right now we're accepting applications through April 30th at 5 p.m. So make sure you guys get your application in before then in order to be considered for the grant. So that week we will basically look at all of the applications, make sure that they're, somewhat eligible. We don't do the in-depth pre-screening until the next stage, but basically if it's an eligible business and eligible work needs to be done, we look at how much funding is being requested versus how much we have. And if we can cover all of the applications, we'll begin processing them approximately 2 weeks after. We'll have a distributions list where basically an application is distributed to the project managers, and that will be your contact person going forward. So that's basically the process with that. But if we have to put your application on the wait list, we will send you an email to let you know it's been placed on the wait list. And on our end, if funds become available, we will reach out to that next person, depending on the drawn order, and get that process started. So typically you should hear back from Summer Corps, I would say maybe probably mid to late May. You'll know where your application stands as far as, be notified of anything else. The only thing we would notify you of prior to then is if we need to conduct a lottery, we'll send you an invitation. It's open for you guys to attend. However, your attendance will not impact the results. Either way, we will let you know. So what happens after that is we'll email the applicants a list of that drawn order. So it'll give you somewhat of an idea of where your application stands. Depending on how much money we have, and how many applications we get, we just don't know how many we're going to be able to fund. One applicant can have a $300,000 project where the other one has a $30,000 project. So, we'll have to figure all of that out to see how many applications we can actually move forward with, but we'll definitely keep everyone in the loop.
Awesome. I'm just going to run through a couple really quick. Do we have any of the sample documents? Actually, on our website, if you end up moving forward as an applicant, we actually do have some blank as well as filled out sample documents so that you can look at that. If you specifically have questions about the application, feel free to send us an email at SBIF@summercore.com. And what we can do, we had someone who wanted to set up an appointment. I would say if you have specific questions, let us know. Also, that's really the great opportunity to connect with a delegate agency. And we're happy to connect you with a delegate agency that's nearby, especially also if you have a specific question about your TIP district, if there's funding available there, how much, is it going to be opening anytime soon? If you can't find that on our website, SBIF@summercore.com is where you should send that email. I did get another question just one more time about when you can actually begin work to be able to be reimbursed. So I want to just have that a little bit more clarified. Somebody was asking if they've secured funds, they can start work, right? While the application is ongoing. So can you go through that one more time?
Sure. So it's definitely a process to get to that point. So the first thing would be to submit your application within the open acceptance period. Second, we'll need to determine whether or not we need to conduct lotteries here. So if we need to conduct a lottery, you'll be invited. We'll let you know what the results are. If we do not need to conduct the lottery, we'll begin processing the applications, excuse me, as soon as we can. So a project manager will reach out to you, go over the project on both ends on how the SBIF program works and what it is that you're looking to do. So they'll give you a letter with a list of items that are necessary to complete the application. You'll have 20 days to get that into us. If it's deemed eligible, you'll have 4 months to obtain your contractor's bids, license, insurances, and any architectural drawings if needed. They're not always required, so if you're unclear, don't go paying an architect for drawings that you may not need. You can always check in with SummerCore and we'll discuss that a little bit further with you and advise you on that. But once we get that information, a site visit may need to be conducted. We'll present that information to the city of Chicago. They ultimately have final discretion on approvals. So once we present that to them and they either approve it or deny the project, we will let you know. Typically, there's just, questions that come from the city of Chicago. There might be additional exterior design requirements that may need to be met, but for the most part, the projects do get approved. Once they're approved and you get the official conditional commitment letter in hand, that's when you can actually start paying your contractors, making down payments, applying for, you don't have to wait to apply for the permits, but definitely don't make any down payments to the contractors or pay any other person besides the approved contractor. That is very, very important that you only pay the contractor that was approved for all labor and materials. So making sure that they are in charge of everything. We don't want any receipts from Home Depot, Menards, paying John Smith from down the street, the handyman. We cannot have any of that. It does have to be exactly as it should be. So if you have questions, if you're unclear, you'll have a project manager that will work with you directly. I'm always available if there's any questions. We have our SBIF general inbox. So if you're unclear, I'd rather you ask a million questions up front than do something that might jeopardize your grant in the end. So do need the conditional commitment letter before you get started with the work. And if there's anything that happens to come up during that time, that, let's say, they're knocking down walls and you need to replace some wood, you need to replace some plumbing back there. That needs to be brought up to Summer Corps' attention immediately, because if there's any changes that are required, you want to make sure that we're notified of that, we make the appropriate changes. Otherwise, that may be a cost that you incur that we cannot cover for you. So always, communicate what's going on, whether you think it's big or small. The project managers may be able to advise or even assist if there's any delays, or steer you in a different direction of where you think you should be headed. I know this is news to people. This is new. This is, something out of the ordinary, but we want you to feel comfortable with the process. I've been doing this for 19 years, so trust me when I tell you this works. But it's just a matter of getting things done systematically in the order that it should be. We're here to help. So don't feel intimidated by it. You have us here. You have the delegate agencies as well. So we're ready to rock and roll with your projects.
That's awesome. Thanks for that clarification. We had somewhat of a specific question here. This person says they have a property that is residential, but it's zoned for commercial, and they want to renovate part of the structure to be dedicated to their business. So it's going to be more like they currently rent a shared kitchen, so now they want to have their own place for their business. Is this something that would be eligible for SBIF?
Initially, no, because if it is a residential property, although it's zoned commercial, we cannot proceed because we do not allow any residential properties through the SBIF program. So if it's classified as residential, the classification must be changed to commercial prior to applying for SBIF. Otherwise, the application will be denied. So it is a process to do that. If that is done, and we have a new open acceptance period, you can always submit a new application. We can cover renovations to commercial spaces and businesses, but residential will not be eligible.
So somebody was saying that they're a business renting their space to a nonprofit. Would that be an eligible business to apply? I would say either the landlord or the nonprofit tenant. Are they eligible to apply if SBIF is available in that district?
Yes, either or. It all depends on who's going to be responsible for making the payments for the renovations. That should be the person that's going to actually apply, because one of the affidavits that the tenant will need to complete is the approval, giving the tenant basically approval to do the work to the landlord's property. And in that affidavit, it states that the landlord will not contribute funds to the project. So basically, if you apply, you have to pay. So we can't have an applicant apply and then the landlord pays for the renovation. So we can't pay the tenant for something that he did not pay for.
Makes sense. Somebody asked if they had the funds on their own or maybe got a loan from a family member. Is that different than if you get it from a bank or a nonprofit? Does that change the process at all?
It does not. It does not. As
Okay.
long as you have the funds and the payments are made directly from your account, it does not matter whether you obtained a loan from the bank or if your mom gave you a loan. So just make sure that the payments are made from your either personal or the business account.
One question we had is, do applicants, do they actually have to have a social security number? Is that required to apply for the SBIF program?
They do not have to have a social security number. They do need a ETIN number, I believe it's called. So as long as they have that number, they should be fine.
Okay. This one, I'm not sure, we may have to do a different follow-up, but a HUD certified housing counseling agency. They're affiliated with a national intermediary through HUD. Is this going to be disqualifying? I'm not sure. That sounds pretty specific, but I don't know, maybe you know off the top of your head.
I don't know off the
Okay.
top of my head. We may need to do some investigating on the back end to
Yeah.
see if this is tied to a chain or a franchise that may exclude them.
Yeah, I was going to say for that person who submitted that question, spiff@summercore.com, send us an email so we can ask a few more specific questions to try to see if we'll be able to help you with that. let's see. Oh, following up on that question about that I said that was a business owner who was renting to a nonprofit. The question was, does the nonprofit actually need to be generating profit or I guess like having some type of revenue generating to be eligible?
They do need to be doing something. They need to be providing products, services, resources. So yes, they do need to be doing something. I mean, we're not going to scrutinize and say, well, you made less than 100,000, you don't qualify. That's not what we do. However, it needs to be a fully operational not-for-profit. Most entities are required to have licenses. So if you're not licensed by the city of Chicago, chances are you might be required to be licensed by the state of Illinois, which will be acceptable. But basically, you have to be properly licensed and you have to be actually operating the not-for-profit out of that space.
And just as a reconfirm, you said that somebody else, they asked again, they couldn't hear. You said that you could have a personal loan from someone or bank loan that won't, change the process. Toy, I see that you've had questions specifically about your firearm instructor business. I recall that being something that we were looking at with DPD. So you'll get a follow-up on that for sure. I recall that coming through. Somebody asked about if they could use their business credit card for funding a project.
You can make payments with credit cards. However, there's additional documentation that will require on that front, which will include the register receipt of the payment that was made and also credit card statements showing that transaction. Again, it must be your credit card. You cannot, incur cost under someone else's account and be reimbursed for that. So as long as it is your account, we've seen credit card payments being made and also advances that have been taken to make payments via check. So I've seen credit card statements where they take an advance, they write a check, and then they submit that as a proof of payment. So that is an acceptable method of payment as well.
I know I had a contractor that was asking if they could bid on the projects. Now, that's not something that we set up and it's as opposed to potentially some other Chicago programs, we don't set up an opportunity for contractors to bid on it. But if contractors have questions about the SBIF program and how it actually works for the contractor side, I'd suggest that they reach out to us at spiff@summercore.com. Maybe Sylvia for a little follow-up.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can reach out to our general SPIF inbox. Reach out to me directly. I'd be more than happy to walk you guys through what the process is like. Our websites are very informative as well, but if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. On that note, I do want to mention that you cannot act as your own contractor. So if we have a construction company that's applying, or if you happen to have a general contractor's license, and you feel that, hey, I can take on this project and do it myself. Unfortunately, that's not permitted through this program. You do need to have a third-party contractor actually completing the work.
Okay. Sorry, we've got another question here. So someone was asking if a business owner applied for SPIF and used funds on their business 2 years ago, are they eligible to apply again for that same business?
A little bit of clarity. They use funds
They
for their business.
Yeah, so they did a SPIF project 2 years ago. But they did not say how much the SPIF project was for. So could they do it again? Could they apply again for that same location? Now it's only been 2 years. So I would say it probably depends
So
on how much.
yeah, it depends on how much was received. So if it was not maxed out, then you'd be eligible for the difference. So for example, if you received only $100,000 2 years ago, your max is 150, you'd be eligible for the difference of that $50,000. So we'd have to take a look at how much was actually dispersed the last time, deduct that from what you'd qualify for. Depending on whether it's a mixed-use building, they're capped at $75,000 and single commercial spaces are capped at $150,000. So you guys can, look on the back end of when you received it, how much it was, figure out that difference. We can also look into that for you if you contact us directly. But you qualify for the difference of that first disbursement. Or another option would be to wait the full 3 years and submit an application after 3 years. You'd be eligible for the full amount.
Helpful. All right, that's going to be it for the questions. We had a lot of great questions today. I'm so glad. I wanted to put up the contact information screen again. Our general inbox there, the SBIF at summercore.com. So for anybody who was like, I have additional questions, I have specific questions about my TIF, I need to be able to connect with my delegate agency to walk me through the application process, things like that. That's the email box that you want to be sending notes to. We are very responsive and are checking it all throughout the day. And with that, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for attending today, and we look forward to seeing your projects.
Thank you all. Thanks, Kim.